All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. My name is Jamie, and I'm going to be talking to you about intimate partner violence in same sex relationships. So, the reason why I chose this topic was because I do have a lot of men in my life who are gay, and I've never heard any of them talk about violence in their relationships. So, it just piqued my interest. So, let's take a look. All right, what is intimate partner violence? And that is violence between people in an intimate relationship. The textbook also talks about spousal violence, and that refers to violence in a same sex relationship who are common law, legally married, separated, or divorced. The chart here is taken from page 258 of our textbook, and this gives you a snapshot of the types of abuse, characteristics, and examples of intimate partner violence that are most common. All right, and then we want to look at how common it actually is. So, in this graph here, it's from a 2009 study in Canada on spousal violence in different groups. By looking at this graph, you can see that the immigrant violence is at a small 4%, whereas that in bisexuals, it is at 24%. That blew my mind. I couldn't believe that. I was actually also very surprised on the number of gay and lesbians that have a high occurrence of 12% in spousal violence. That kind of brought me into a question of why. Why is that? Why is it so high? All right. So, why is it so high? So, it is high because lesbian, gay, and bisexual women and men are more prone to higher rates of poverty, stigma, and marginalization. According to the Center for Disease Control, they did a study in 2010, and it was called the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey. And it found, and you can see in this little snapshot here, it found that 61% of bisexual women have experienced intimate partner violence. That blows me away. That number is huge compared to the other ones. The survey found bisexual women experienced rape earlier in life compared to heterosexual women. Stalking was high among bisexual women, double that of heterosexual women. And bisexual women were more concerned with their safety other than lesbian and heterosexual women. I couldn't believe this when I was reading it. And although this is a statistic from the United States, I still thought it was worth mentioning. So consequences to this behavior for the victim of partner violence, there's physical trauma, so like physical injuries, sexual health, such as refusal of contraception, which can lead to HIV and STIs, reproductive health, so violence during pregnancy if two women were trying to conceive and they weren't able to, or there was some violence, there could be miscarriages or stillbirths and things like that. Mental health, so things like post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, substance abuse, even suicide. Physical health, so headaches, gastrointestinal problems, fibromyalgia, social and economic costs, women in isolation, unable to work, loss in wages, and kind of goes down from there. And then also impact on children. Early childhood exposure can cause some emotional and behavioral problems for that child later in life. All right, that kind of brought up a question was how often are lesbian, gay, and bisexual men and women seeking help? Well, in a study, I found that many LGBTQ community members don't actually seek help or report acts of partner violence for fear of further oppression, additional stigmatization, and social marginalization. The study was done in 2018, so it's pretty recent. All right, so the theory and factors. So our textbook gives us two theories on intimate partner violence. The first one is the patriarchal theory, and that is the theory that suggests violence of men against their female partners is rooted in a broad set of cultural beliefs and values that support the male dominance of women. So obviously that theory doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with same sex couples or relationships, but I found a little bit more conformity when it came to the social learning theory. So, that is a theory of human behavior that posits people develop skills, behaviors, and attitudes by how they are directly reinforced or punished for these skills, behaviors, and attitudes, and by observing how others are similarly punished or reinforced. So, let's look a little bit more at the social learning theory. So the social learning theory views three main elements for intimate partner violence. There's the origins, where the aggressor learned such behavior. The instigators, how the stimuli will provoke the aggressor. And regulators, how the consequence of the behavior will impact whether or not the behavior will be repeated. The instigators do have some little um, some little what's the word I'm looking for? Some little categories. So the adverse instigators, and those are the avoided stimuli, the incentives, which is the stimuli that is perceived as reward for the aggressive behavior, and the delusional, which is associated with bizarre belief systems. Regulators, external punishment, so that's like being arrested, and then self punishment, which is also known as having a conscience. All right, factors. So this image comes from page 273 of the textbook, and it just shows the relationship between this theory or this model of the ecological model of family violence. It kind of shows how it's kind of a full circle. They're all interrelated. So the model examines the relationship between the multiple levels of influence, including individual, such as prior exposure to violence and substance abuse. In the individual, the relationship, which is the influence of violence by peers, partners, and family. Community, such as the environment, so schools, neighborhood, that kind of thing, and societal levels, so that is the supports, the cultural norms, and the support of the police and the government. All right, treatment. All right, so treatment. So because the same-sex couples and relationships do kind of conform a little bit more to the social learning theory, treatment for violence is based around a kind of a cognitive behavioral approach. So cognitive behavior therapy, or also known as CBT, is focused on changing what someone thinks about a certain thing, or violence in this case, or intimate partner violence to be specific, and how they react. So the textbook also talks about the rehabilitation of offenders with Canada's Family Violence Prevention Program, which focuses on the following. And lastly, we have some research. So I found research around the treatment and same-sex partner violence to be very limiting. The majority of research and statistics focus on women's victimization from a male partner. Considering the high number of gay, lesbian, and bisexual men and women who have reported intimate partner violence, this is an area of research that I think could really benefit some further exploration. So this link here, I just found this study to be very interesting because it focuses on the LGBTQ community violence and youth. But it does give some really helpful recommendations and implications of practice for professionals who may be working with this vulnerable community, such as nurses and social workers and things like that. It was quite interesting. All right, so my last little bubble here is just some references if you ever want to take a look at anything that I've discussed. But other than that, that is it. So thank you for taking a look, and I hope this gives you a little bit more information on same sex relationships and intimate partner violence.